Algebra 2, Unit 9, Day 4 notes. We're going to start off by finding the domain of a square root function. Sounds interesting. Well, remember domain, remember you did range and domain. Domain is all possible x values that are in your function. What could x equal and still give me a real number? Right? So we give you two steps, right? We take what's inside or under the square root. By the way, if you want to sound smart, the name of that, everything under the square root, that's called a radicand. Okay? So the radicand, we are going to say that that's got to be greater than or equal to 0. So we would put that right here, and we would say is greater than or equal to 0. Why? Because you can't take the square root of something that's negative. Square root of 0, yeah, that's okay. Square root of positive, that's okay. But you can't have a square root of a negative, at least not till unit 10. Okay, so square root of the radicand, okay, has got to have the radicand either be greater than 0 or equal to 0. And that's why we are saying the radicand is greater than or equal to 0. Okay, that's step 1. And then step 2 is do what you did back in Algebra 1, solve for x. So we would simply, in this case, add 2 to both sides of the equation, and you get x is greater than or equal to 2. Right? That would be the domain of this square root function. And just to give you a visual, right, here is the square root of x minus 2 in a grapher. Let's take a look at it. And you can see that all of the x values from 2 and then to the right are in the function. Okay? You've got 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? It goes all the way to infinity. Okay? Or at least it tries to. Right? So 2 and greater. Right? That's a visual for you on just a little backup to make sure that we did the correct stuff and we got the right answer, okay? which we did. Okay? Now, just a word to the wise, if you divide by a negative, like if this were like negative 4x is greater than or equal to 8, if we divided by negative 4, please remember, you're going to switch the little inequality arrow. Okay, so the arrow is pointing to the right, and you divide by a negative, switch it so that it points to the left. Okay, keep your x on the left side, and you should be in dandy shape. All right, so here are some examples for us. Let's fly right through these. Hopefully you find this pretty comfortable and easy. Right. So what is the domain of the root of x plus 8? Well, we take the radicand and we say it's got to be greater than or equal to 0. Step 1. Step 2, solve. We subtract 8 from both sides. So x has to be greater than or equal to negative 8 to give us real number solutions. Okay? Let's just visually take a look again. So here's the graph of y equals the square root of x plus 8. And you can see that the function just does not go to the left of negative 8. Okay? It's negative 8 and greater. It's equal to negative 8 and it's greater than negative 8. All of those x values work in this function. Okay? But anything less than negative 8, not in the domain. Okay. Let's go to the right here. This little question here says we want the domain of root of x minus 7. So step 1, x minus 7 has got to be greater than or equal to 0. Right? And now step 2, we're going to solve it. So we add 7 to both sides of the equation. And we get that x has to be greater than or equal to 7 in order to be in this function. Okay? Anything that's not greater than or equal to 7 will end up giving you an error if you type it in. Okay, go down to G. Step 1, The radicand must be greater than or equal to 0. Step 2, let's solve. We have to cancel this 7, so we got to subtract 7 from both sides. That leaves me with this minus x, and 0 minus 7 is negative 7. Well, I don't want x, I don't want negative x, I want x. So that's negative 1 times x, like invisible math. There's a 1 there, we just don't write it. So I'm going to divide both sides of the equation by negative 1. So x, 7, and then we divide it by a negative. So the rule is we change the side that we are going to with our inequality. Okay, let's get a visual on that one. So here's a graph of y equals the square root of 7 minus x. And once again, we can see, okay, it looks like we're correct because notice what happened here. The 7 is the very highest x value that we got. And then everything to the left of it, which is less than 7, is also in our function. Okay, so less than or equal to 7 looks like it's visually confirmed right there. We were correct. Okay, and finally, 6 minus 3x, we want to say that that radicand must be greater than or equal to 0. So let's subtract 6 from both sides of the equation. So we got a negative 3x is greater than or equal to negative 6. And now we have to divide both sides by negative 3. So we've got x, and we've got 2. And because we divided by a negative, we have to change the direction of our inequality symbol. So x is going to be less than or equal to negative 2. Right? And we're going to use this information doing the second part of these notes here. We're going to be able to graph with some knowledge and not have to put them in the calculator because of our knowledge of finding the domain. Okay, we'll see that in just a second here. All right, so how do we graph a square root function without a calculator? Well, here is the parent function, y equals the square root of x, or f of x equals the square root of x. The starting point, there's no vertex anymore. We have a starting point, it's at 0, 0. Now we are going to go 1 unit to the right, and then the square root of 1 is 1, so we go up 1 unit. From the starting point, right, we want perfect squares. So 1 squared is 1, 2 squared is 4. So I'm going to go right 4, and then the square root of 4 is 2, so I'm going to go up 2. And then the next perfect square is 3 squared, which is 9. So I'm going to go right 9, and then up the square root of 9, which is 3. Okay, so that I've got 4 points. I have my starting point, smooth curve through the other points, and that's it. So let's write those steps down here. So once you get your starting point, we're going to go right 1, and then up the square root of 1 is 1. Then we're going to go right 4, and then square root of 4 is 2. So we go up 2 for the parent function. We go right 9, and then we go up the square root of 9, which is 3. Okay. All right, transformation reminders. It's not always going to be up 1, up 2, up 3. Why is that? If that a is negative, then we are reflecting over the x-axis, and we're going to be going down possibly 1, 2, and 3. If there's a negative inside with the x, then that means we're possibly going to go to the left. Okay, so the a, just the coefficient of the square root, changes the pattern or the steepness of the function. Right now, the h, because it's in the grouping symbol with the x, that will take your starting point and move it left or right. And then the k, which is outside of the grouping symbol, because it's a plus minus, it's either going to move up or down. Okay, it's going to move our starting point up or down. So let's see that as we do some examples here. All right, so this first f of x that we have, right? Step one, where is my starting point? Where is my starting point? My starting point, again, look for the pluses and minuses inside and then after my radical. So -2 means 2 to the right, +4 means 4 up, okay? Because the -2 is inside the square root symbol with the x. So we go 2 to the right and 4 up. That is my starting point. Now, I'm going to go to the right one. I'm going to go up one. I'm going to go to the right 4 and up 2. And I'm going to go to the right 9 and I'm going to go up 3. Starting point, smooth curve through the 3 points. Okay. Now, what was the domain? I want to go back to that. What was the domain of my function? Remember, x minus 2 was going to be greater than or equal to 0. Add 2 to both sides. That means x is greater than or equal to 2. So again, we started at the 2, and it was greater than or equal to, so that means we were going to the right. So that tells me that we were good. That tells me that my graph looks very reasonable. It resembles what the question's function should resemble. Okay, let's go to the second one. All right. Where is my starting point? Okay. Step one, starting point. Okay. My starting point. There's a +1 inside with the x, which means we're going to go left 1. And there's a -3 outside. Okay. Subtracting 3 after the radical, that's going to go down 3. So we're going to go left 1, down 3. Okay. Now, I'm curious, am I going to go to the right or to the left? Okay. Well, and let's make that the second step. Okay. Let's expand the steps a little bit. Am I going left or am I going right? Right? Let's find the domain. X plus 1 has got to be greater than or equal to 0. So that means x is greater than or equal to -1, because I subtracted 1 from both sides. Okay, greater than or equal to means we're going to the right. That's all there is to it. Greater than or equal to -1. So we started at x is -1, which is right there. We're going to go to the right. We're going to go right 1 and up 1. How do I know we're going up 1? Because there's an invisible 1 in front of our radical. Now I'm going to go right 1, 2, 3, 4, and I'm going to go up 2. Okay, so that's where I'm going, right there to that point. Let's see if I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and up 2. And now I'm going to go 9 to the right and up 3, right to there. It's my smooth curve. Okay, so briefly going back to here. Number 1, where's my starting point? Get it. Number 2, am I going to go left or right? It's always going to be 1, 4, and 9. Okay, it's always, whether it's left or right, it's always going to be, let's change the color to make it prettier for it. It's always going to be 1, 4, and 9 units to either the left or right. And then your third step is going to be, is there a stretch? Stretch with a question mark. This one had a 1 in front of it. There was no stretch. We just went up. Square root of 1 is 1, square root of 4 is 2, square root of 9 is 3. Okay. Now let's finish up with these two little lovelies here. Okay, this guy on the left, 2 root x plus 1. Okay. Step 1, where's my starting point? Starting point, okay, there is no minus h inside, so we're not going left or right. There's a +1, so it means I go up 1. So I'm at 0, 1. Step 2, am I going left or am I going right? Well, all that's under there is x. So that means that my domain is x is greater than or equal to 0. Okay? Greater than or equal to. So because it says greater than or equal to, I'm going to the right. Okay, let's change the color up. I'm going to the right. I'm going to go to the right 1 time, 4 times, 9 times. And then finally, is there a stretch? This one does have a stretch because there's a 2 there. So yeah, I'm gonna multiply all of my vertical moves, okay, my 1, my 2, and my 3 by 2. I'm gonna multiply by 2. So I'm at the starting point right here. I'm gonna go right 1, and instead of going up 1, I'm gonna double that. I'm gonna go up 2. All right, so we went right 1 and up 2. So now we're gonna go right 4, which we always do. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then instead of going up 2, we're gonna double it. So we're gonna go up 4. Okay. Then finally, we're gonna go right 9, as we always do. And after we go right 9 units, we would go up 3 units, but again, we are gonna double it. So we're gonna go up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units instead of instead of 3 units. So notice that this one's a little steeper, okay? So I'll go back and I'll erase all of these, make it look pretty. Okay, so recapping again. Get your starting point first. Second thing, you're going to either go left or right, 1, 4, 9. Make sure that your domain tells you which way to go. And then thirdly, when you go up, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, but it's going to be multiplied by your stretch. Okay, let's finish off with this guy right over here. All right, so where is my domain? Well, you know, this thing here is kind of tricky. There's a 3 minus x. So you know what I'm going to do? I know that I'm not going to move my starting point up or down, but I am not sure if I'm going to go 3 to the right or 3 to the left. You know, the 3's positive, but the x is negative. So when in doubt, if you want to know where that starting point is, make sure you find your domain. So let's do the domain. The domain of this function is that 3 minus x is going to be greater than or equal to 0. That's step 1. Step 2, let's solve. Minus 3. So I got negative x is greater than or equal to negative 3. And then finally, I'm going to divide both sides by negative 1 because there's a negative in front of my x. So I've got x and I've got positive 3, but I've got, look at this, I got to change my direction of my inequality. So I've got x is less than or equal to 3. Well, what does that tell me? That tells me that, all right, because I'm not going to go up or down, there's no plus or minus over here, I'm going to go to positive 3 for my x, and I'm going to be going to the left because it's less than or equal to, okay? So I got my starting point. I know I'm going to the left. I'm going to go to the left 1 time. I'm going to go to the left 4 times. I'm going to go to the left 9 times. And then my stretch. Stretch, I'm going to double all of them. My 1, 2, 3, I'm going to double. So I'm going to go left 1, up 1, double it. Left 4, square root of 4 is 2, but I'm going to double it, 4. I'm going to go left 9, and I'm going to go up 3, but I'm going to double it to 6. And once again, it's twice as steep as your parent function square root of x, and there you have it. Okay, Go back and do these last couple, rewind it, pause as much as you need, and then come ask questions in class. All right. Last section of Unit 9 in the books. Day 4 is done. See ya.